Next on the list is going to be the Japanese helmet. The Japanese helmet looks unique. It has some parts that look European, some parts that look American. And overall, if you look at it, you just think, oh, that's a helmet. But if you really look at it and compare it to all the other helmets that I have, it's very, very different. Instead of having a tapped rim on the outside like the World War I does, or a bulged line like the Stahlhelm does, or a sheer line, is what it has. It's just a pressed piece. All the other ones are pressed pieces in their own way, but this one doesn't have a rounded edge. It's just a sheer metal piece that's cut out and pressed. Very, very different from the others. You can see where it was held at. You can see how it would have been worn. You can see how it's different. On top of that, it's a little thinner than your Stahlhelm is. It's about the same as your Adrian style or your M19. But it's also a different color. A lot of your helmets that came from Japan were actually a base brownish green color. A lot of the European helmets weren't really a base greenish color to start with. Your Germans had your blacks. Your Americans had your solid greens. Your French had a black helmet. Your Italians had a tan. The Japanese, they had almost a tropical looking brown green. They had their own European spin on their Asian influences. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with this whole Japanese blitzkrieg. They took a lot from the Europeans, but they weren't just happy with having a European style. They had it had to be Japanese. Japanese tanks, Japanese planes, Japanese ships, Japanese helmets. Everything was stemmed from Europe, but given its own personalization. With the infantry helmet, they had a star on the front. They wanted to go utilitarian with it like the Germans did. The Germans had their spike, their ball, and their tassel. The Japanese had a star for infantry, an anchor for the navy, a cross for their medics. For their civil defense, they had their imperial emblem. Originally, it was just a chrysanthemum flower with some kind of kanji on it. Then they went to a laurel underlining the kanji on top. And this was prominent on their rim, meaning you could see it immediately. This helmet is your civil defense. It's got the kanji with the laurel underneath, and it's late in the war. They only came up with this symbol towards the end of it. It's very simple, it's very utilitarian, but it's still got its own taste. It's still its own way to be. The Japanese really liked their categories. They liked looking at things and knowing what it does. That's why they went with the star. That's why they went with the anchor. And that's why they went with their kanji. Because if you saw 3 men lined up in a row, you'd know exactly what they do and where they are. That's why I say the Japanese are very similar, but very different, and really should be focused on more. You don't really see any movies or anything that depict the Japanese specifically. They're more of an add-on to the story. They're kind of a means to an end. They're the guys we fought. They had their own history. They had their own monstrosities in World War II. They had their own military, their own men, their generals. They had their own brilliance. And it's just not covered as much, and that's a shame.